So I always kind of started like that, but yeah. So this one is going to be talking about this one is going to be talking about inpatient experiences, psych wards, psychiatric hospitals, stuff like that. Um, so it all started when I was 18 and I went to the doctor. I went to my GP, my general practitioner, my family doctor, and I told him, yeah, I've been experiencing like certain things, like wanting to harm myself, um, hearing things, and he directed me to the emergency room. And in the emergency room, there was a nurse liaison, and she said she had, well, there were two doctors or psychiatrists that assessed me, and then there was a nurse liaison who informed me that I was going to be confined in the psych ward facility of the hospital. That was in 2014, I believe. It was around maybe April 2014, or was it 2013? I think April 2014. So April 2014. So yeah, so I was there for a while. My room was actually really nice. There was like a cherry blossom tree outside of it as a view, so that was good. My nurse, I think her name is Tracy. My nurse was really nice. My psychiatric nurse, she was really nice. It was funny because I saw like certain graffiti on the walls of the psych ward that said these nurses are bitches, but my nurse was nice, so that was fine. And then I met a couple people. There was this one older gentleman that asked if I was Filipino, and I said yes. And then he was like, "Oh, Marcos, who was the president of the Philippines, like in the 80s or something." And then there was this guy who, I think he was in there for drug addiction or something. So that there's that guy. My parents got to visit me about once a week. Um, yeah, so I was there for I think 2 weeks, and it wasn't too bad. It was just like the washrooms. I didn't like using public washrooms at that point in my life, so I in my language it would be nabutan. I think in English that would be like it caught up to you, like poo and pee, feces, urine caught up with me because I was holding it. But basically it was just like an almost like an apartment, but for people with mental illnesses and drug addiction, because like you had like a bed. Oh, but there was just one really mean lady. Because I never wanted to have breakfast with the other patients. I always wanted to buy my own breakfast and then eat it in my room. And this one volunteer, I think she wasn't a nurse. This one volunteer got really pissed at me because I never wanted to eat breakfast with other patients, and then she basically kept like banging on my room door and was like, "You need to come eat breakfast. You need to come eat breakfast. You're being stubborn." Blah blah blah. And then another time when we were doing, there was an exercise activity, and we were doing exercises, and then that volunteer, I forgot her name, but the volunteer, she shoved me. She like actually shoved me, and then the I the volunteer, there were two volunteers. Both of them are Indian, I think, and they spoke the same language. I don't know if it was Punjabi or Tamil or Malayalam. I don't know what, some type of Indian language, but basically the one of the volunteers, the one that was mad at me, shoved me, and then the volunteer that was from the same country as her started like berating her and saying I don't know what they were saying, but because it was in another language, but I think it was something along the lines of you can't treat the patients like that. You can't just shove a patient because you're frustrated with them. So that was, I think, a sign of abuse, basically. It's too bad I didn't get her name, but I kind of let it go, especially because the other volunteer did reprimand the volunteer that shoved me. So that was that. We had some like painting activities, and I just painted like really depressing things. Yeah, it wasn't that bad, but I remember when I was told that I was going to be confined, I was very upset. I cried, and then I told my mom, if you're gonna confine me here, that means you don't love me or something like that. But it's, I think it's hard to, it was involuntary confinement basically, and it's hard, I think, because like my mom at that time, she was like, it should be up to the parents' discretion whether they want their child to be. I was 18, mind you, so I was already an adult, but I still was a dependent of my parents, still am. But my parents basically said, how come you're holding our daughter against her will? Um, but that was that. And then to show you how effective involuntary confinement is, or rather is not, I attempted suicide about a month after my involuntary confinement. And yeah, so basically, I had a whole bunch of sleeping pills that I got from the time that I was involuntarily confined. And I took those sleeping pills, I overdosed from them, and then the ambulance, the police, stuff like that, they came to my house, and I was in and out of it. And I remember the police officers were like laughing for some reason, maybe because they were finding it funny that I was in and out of consciousness, but that was kind of rude. But what can you do? Anyway, there's still food in my teeth. But yeah, so I attempted suicide that time, and then I was put in the hospital, and my mom was afraid that they were going to confine me again involuntarily. But once I recovered and they got all that, the drugs out of my system and stuff, um they didn't confine me, they just let me go, which is good, because after that I never went back to the psych ward or attempted suicide. I mean, I've thought about it still, like, but I haven't attempted it since that time that I overdosed. Um, and then I did go to this place called Crest, which is just like, it's almost like also a psych ward, but kind of not really. It's like a house, like a halfway house almost. But the reason I went there was because I was trying a new medication called clozapine, and I needed someone to monitor my like heart and all the other stuff constantly. So that's why they put me in that house, and that one was okay. But like, you did chores and stuff like that, and they were like, I was living with like some people who were addicted to drugs, some people who were schizophrenic, and there's a TV. It wasn't really a psych ward per se, but it was, I guess the closest descriptor would be a halfway house. But yeah, so I lived there for a couple of weeks just to monitor my clozapine intake. Um, but I didn't have a good reaction to that drug, so now I'm on olanzapine, which is another antipsychotic. So I talked about this in a previous video. I'll link the video of me talking about my medications down below. But anyway, yeah. I think that might be about it. Like, so ending points, involuntary confinement is not effective, at least not for me. Yeah, that's pretty much the point of this whole thing, is to, yeah, BC, which is where I live, British Columbia, Canada, you need to do something about that whole involuntary confinement situation that you have going on, because yes, I was a threat to harming myself, but I was not a threat to harming others. But like I said, after I was involuntarily confined in a psych ward, I still decided to attempt suicide after. So it's It's kind of like putting mentally ill people in jail when you put them in a psych ward. Um, it's just my opinion. You could disagree, but yeah. So that's some food for thought, and I hope you think about it. Bye.